Hey guys, Mike here. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to efficiently deal with every single class in the game. So for example, like every enemy that comes at you, every enemy will have a class or a type of unit. And this is for maddening. If the reason you want to deal with enemy classes very efficiently is because maddening is no joke. You have to optimize your DPS, especially at the end game. So if you're wasting moves trying to just chip enemies and it's taking you like 3 units to kill 1 unit, then you might not even be able to beat some of the end game chapters because they're sending wave after wave after wave of pre-deployed enemy units combined with reinforcements, so they're just going to overwhelm you. So taking care or being able to kill enemies as fast as possible, ideally in 1 hit, is ideal and sometimes even necessary for some situations. So I'm just going to go through every class, and you can imagine the enemy having that class, and I'm just going to tell you how to deal with them. Alright, so let's start with the horses. So I'll just skip the calves because they're mostly paladins in the end game, and paladins have equal defense and equal res. So ideally you want to use Rider's Bane. You can use Sigurd, you can use his Rider's Bane, you can upgrade a Rider's Bane and put it on someone. Sigurd is a very good option. The challenging thing about paladins is that they're pretty much like going to be brawlers, so you don't really want to fight them one-on-one. Otherwise you're going to be taking damage. Luckily, if they're like if they have weapons like swords, axes, lances, you can try to outrange them. That way you can get a chip damage. If you can't get like a Rider's Bane on a paladin and kill the paladin with Rider's Bane, then you want to at least chip them from range. You don't want to really be taking damage from paladins if you can't help it. I mean, granted, if they have like a spear or a tomahawk, then you may be taking damage. One way to get behind that is just use the weapon triangle and just break them. What I like to do is if I'm trying to take out a squad of paladins, I'm trying to identify who has the 2-range weapon, and what I'll do is I'll break that unit so I can get a follow-up attack, a safe follow-up attack on another person and get the kill. And the reason you want to avoid taking damage, if possible, sometimes you want to take damage on or put your units in danger on enemy phase so you can output as much damage as possible. But the reason you want to break those 1-2 units is because it can save one of your healers a heal, and instead of healing that turn, they can possibly shoot out a spell or something and do even more damage. So that's one reason to break 1-2 units, 1-2 range units, so that you can avoid taking damage and, like I said, get in more damage from your healers. Your healers can start doing damage, right? So paladins, just weapon triangle advantage to break. Weapon triangle advantage. You can even break the 1 range units. That's another way to safely chip them and then get follow-up kill. Ideally, you use a Rider's Bane and try to one-shot them. That's one thing you can. That's the ideal situation. All right, Wolf Knight. Now, Wolf Knights, they're actually pretty tough. Wolf Knights are actually very good against a lot of units. There's one unit that can hard counter Wolf Knights, and that is the General. The General just has such high defense that even if the Wolf Knights are using knives and on maddening they have such high attack, the Generals will just totally shut them down. They won't do any damage to them. And Generals are also particularly good because these have such high defense that the knives won't poison the Generals if they're doing 0 damage, right? You actually have to do damage on the unit to actually poison them, so they won't be able to poison you. So what I like to do is take a General and give them a Tomahawk, and the Tomahawk or Hand Axe allows them to counterattack on enemy phase, and then you can get damage that way. And their defense is usually it's nothing too spectacular, so the General can just overpower Wolf Knights. So if you want a hard counter for Wolf Knights, just use General. Alternative strategies, you can use the Rider's Bane as well. Rider's Bane also works on Wolf Cavalry, but I find that a lot of the other units are not very good against Wolf Cavalry because, like I said, they're usually pretty fast and they can counterattack with knives. So like if you try to use a Mage on a Wolf Knight with a 1-2 range, then they're just gonna hit you, and the Mage usually has shitty defense, so the knife is actually pretty devastating to a Mage. You can always try to outrange them with longbows and Thoron and Thunder. That's one option as well, to get in chips and try to finish them off with the second unit. That way you can avoid taking damage, but I find the General is like a hard shutdown to Wolf Knights, and anytime I see a squad of like 3 Wolf Knights, I'm just gonna send Goldberry, who's my General, just just sit her in front. They can try to do whatever they want, but she just shuts them down with the tomahawk, and it's really nice. Even if you don't kill them with the tomahawk, just getting that enemy phase damage on Wolf Knights is really nice, because you can just follow up with the rest of your units on player phase and just get the easy kills without taking damage. So that's how I personally deal with Wolf Knights. Martial Monk and Martial Master are actually surprisingly pretty tanky. Like, they have pretty high and equal defense and res. So you really need to just find just unit busters, like just people with high attack to fight them. And you don't usually, if they have the scroll equipped, that's usually good for you, because you can use range. You have options. You can Boganon, you can just any high magic unit. You can throwing spears or tomahawks at them to stay out of range. That's usually the best way to go about it. Their speed is pretty decent and pretty respectable, so that's why you don't really want to fight them up close. The one weakness that they have is that their attack power is probably not that high, so you can go in a brawl with them and probably come out on top. But again, if you're trying to avoid enemy phase damage, you just want to get that 1-2 range on them so that they can't counterattack you, get as much damage that way, and then maybe finish off with a weaker unit. Like I like to maybe get like a Boganon on the Martial Monks and Masters, and then just follow up with like one of my weaker units, like a Thief, who can just throw knives and finish them off that way. That's one way I like to do it with it. Thieves are also pretty good against them, because I find Thieves in a brawl with Martial Monks are they're pretty respectable. Like, they won't get killed. Thieves are pretty fast, that they won't get doubled, and they can get that reliable finishing hit on them with the knives. That's how I usually deal with Martial Monks. Another thing you can do is just chip and dip them with cavalry. That's another way. You're not really going to break them. You're just relying on your cavalry's high attack to get in big damage. It's not the optimal strategy, but you just kind of want to stay away from the fists, basically. And usually they'll come with spells as well, so that's why you kind of want to kill them really fast, so they can't switch to their spell and hit you on enemy phase with the spell. So that that's why they're they seem like they're weak, but they're actually not that weak. Especially because you can't really break the fists either, so you can't really break them as well. I haven't tried smashing them. I'm not sure if you can smash them and then get a break that way. I don't think so. I think only fists cannot be broken, to be honest. So yeah, just stay at range. All right, High Priest and Mages, I kind of grouped them all together because they just have high res and low defense. Okay, so obviously you want to use a physical attack on them, right? You don't really want to shoot them with spells. It's just wasting your time, and you're just going to get enough to a dogfight. Like a mage dogfight is just going to take forever, and like I said earlier in the very beginning of the video, you don't want to waste time, so you're just going to be wasting time if you're using mages to fight mages. And so how you do it, this is the most effective way I found to deal with them, and is basically equip Alacrity, that skill from Lyn, on someone who's pretty fast. And like, for example, I equipped Alacrity on Panette or Lear, and then I would just, they're my mage killers, and they basically are able to double the mages pretty fast, and they're able to get their double attack off before the mage can counterattack. So that way I'm not taking any damage, right? And that's just the most efficient way to kill them. Because they have low defense, you just want to use speed against them with the Alacrity skill, and that allows you to kill them and you don't take counterattack damage. Now, I mean, it's not the end of the world if you take counterattack damage, but like I said, if you want to be very efficient and kill these guys, especially on maddening, then you have to, save your healers some load and just, maybe, prevent your healers from healing is what I'm trying to say, if you can afford it. And Alacrity is perfect for that. Just like sending a tomahawk, and she has Alacrity, and she can just throw 2 tomahawks before the mage can even counterattack. That's how I kill these mages. That's pretty much my mage buster strategy. Another reason why this strategy is so good is because when you have Thoron mages on the field, Thoron mages, you can't outrange them with a longbow, right? They're just going to counterattack, because Thoron and Thunder also have 3 range. So that's why the Alacrity with the physical unit is so good as well, because you can kill that mage with 2 with your first attack and your follow-up attack before they can even throw on you. So range is not a factor in that matchup, and that's how I deal with mages. All right, Mage Knights. Mage Knights are pretty much a combination of Paladin and Mage. So you just want to exploit their weaknesses. If they're equipped a weapon, you can just break them. If they have a tome, you can outrange them. If it's a 2-range tome, you can outrange them with longbows or Thorons. Maybe not a Thoron because they probably have high resistance. So it's just looking at what the mage has equipped and trying to get in maybe a physical attack on them without having to take retaliation damage. You can probably chip them with a longbow to stay out of range if there are two range magic, Mage Knight, and then finish them off with a a Rider's Bane. That's a good way to deal with it. Honestly, for me personally, I actually don't really. Mage Knights are actually kind of scary just because they're such a wild card that if there's just one Mage Knight, then I will just Astral Storm them just to make the enemy formation just have one type of unit, right? Because if they have like a squad of armors heading towards you, then you're going to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to use magic on them, right? But then when they throw that Mage Knight in the squad, it really throws you off. So like just picking off the Mage Knight can be really good with like a Astral Storm that's getting them disrupting the squad, so it's only one type of unit, so it's easier to handle the squad, right? All right, let's move on then. So right here we got fighters, but I will just group them into hero right now. So the hero units actually have pretty high defense, and they come with the 1-2 range. Just whatever weapon they're using, if they're using axes, you break them with swords. That's a good way to get that first attack, so your second unit can get another attack on them very safely. That's a very reliable way to deal with heroes. Usually, heroes also have very high attack, so that's why you want to definitely get that break on them, so you don't take a counter attack, because they can actually hurt you pretty hard. So getting that breaks with the weapon triangles is good, and then also too, you can also chip them. If you're not going to go with a break, you can also chip them with the ranged magic. Just make sure that they don't have 2 range, and if they have 2 range, then just use a longbow or a Thoron or a Thunder. That's a good way to chip them and soften them up for someone to get the kill. Definitely, again, the same strategy applies where, like if the Paladins have 2 range, definitely prioritize your break on the 1-2 range units, so the heroes with the spears and the tomahawks. That way you can get the kill on them easily with your second unit without getting fear of counterattack. It's usually how I deal with heroes. I think they have slightly higher defense over res, so magic is generally more effective than physical attack against heroes, but not by that much. So you really have to pick your poison and how you want to approach them. So that's how you deal with heroes. They're pretty balanced units, is what I'm trying to say. So just try to exploit the weakness on that first hit, and then you can follow up and get the kill someone else once their weakness has been exploited, like whether that's breaking them or whether that you're just chipping them just to get their HP down a little bit, or weakening them for your second unit. All right, the next class I have here is swordmasters. Swordmasters are actually pretty hard to deal with, especially on Madden. The reason why swordmasters are kind of nasty is because they have such high speed, and that gives them such high avoids. So it's not very reliable to hit them. And the reason that sucks is because, like I said earlier in the very beginning of the video, you want to be very efficient with your kills. So if you're just sending like unit after unit to try and hit a swordmaster and keep dodging all your attacks, then before you know it, you've already wasted like 3 or 4 moves trying to kill this swordmaster, and he just dodged all your attacks because you just got unlucky with the RNG. So one way to deal with swordmasters is, there's a couple ways I like to deal with them. The first way, the pretty straightforward way is to use maybe some sort of Dragon Vein or Torrential Roar or something like that to decrease their avoid. You can throw puddles on the field with Dragon Vein and put a puddle underneath. That will decrease their avoid by 30. And yeah, their strength is not that high in this game. So, but the fact that they can W is pretty nasty. The fact that they're usually locked to 1 range, you can exploit that. So if you can get that avoid minus debuff on them somehow, and then you can start pelting them with spells or bows, that's one way to deal with them. That way your spells and your bows can actually hit them pretty reliably. If you're using a sniper, snipers usually have very high hit rate. Snipers usually have a pretty high hit rate due to their high dex, so snipers are pretty reliable at chipping them. But then again, if you're going to chip them with a sniper or a bow, then you still need someone to finish them off, and you still need to solve the problem of the fact that they have such high avoid. So again, really getting that avoid minus on them somehow is a good strategy. Another thing I like to do is fighting a squad of swordmasters. Another thing you can do is actually boost your hit somehow. So getting your supports up to A as fast as possible, and whoever's going to attack the swordmaster, make sure they're supported by other units, so your hit is boosted higher, so that you can ensure that you can get those hits on the swordmaster. Because, like I said, swordmasters, their biggest strength is the fact that they can dodge because they're so fast. And again, when you engage in combat with a swordmaster, you really don't want to take those 2 hits from them because they're going to be outspeeding you and doubling you. So that's why you chip from a distance. Make sure they're You kind of need a lot of tools to deal with swordmasters, just because it has such high avoid, right? So you can decrease their avoid by debuffing them, getting the avoid minus 30, and then closing in, chipping them with a ranged unit, because they're typically locked at 1 range, and then you come in with a unit to finish them off if they're struggling with the hit rates, you can just support them to just have your allies adjacent to them with A supports to help increase your hit rate, or use someone with a personal skill that can boost hit rate. Again, like I said, the problem with swordmasters and why they're so tough is just because of their high void, in my opinion. It really screws up your play when you spent like 5 moves just trying to kill 1 swordmaster. All right, that's how you deal with swordmasters. Halberdiers are like soldiers. In this game, they're the advanced class for soldiers. Halberdiers typically have even defense and even resistance, so you just I would play against them like a paladin. You just have to exploit their weakness. If they have a spear, then you want to break them as soon as possible, so your follow-up attacks you can follow up safely. And since they have pretty even defense and resistance, you really have to pick your poison, whether you're going to use magic or physical damage, and ideally just chip them or break them first, and then get a reliable unit to secure the kill. That's how you deal with halberdiers. Unfortunately, like swordmasters and halberdiers, because they're not like flyers or mounts, they don't really have a weakness, right? Like they're not even armors either, so you can't use the hammer or any armor, anti-armor. So you can't use anti-armor, you can't use anti-cav, you can't use anti-flyer on them. That's what makes them kind of tough. They're pretty much like brawlers. They're solid, balanced units, so you have to really exploit the weakness first before you get the kill with the weapon triangle or range. All right, we got the Royal Knight. Royal Knight, I'm gonna leave in Paladin strats. Don't really want to talk about Royal Knights. Just have staves, right? Essentially. So we can kind of ignore Royal Knights. Now, berserkers. Okay, berserkers typically have insanely high attack. Like in endgame, they usually, on average, they usually have at least 70 attack, physical attack, right? And they'll usually carry heavy weapons as well, smash weapons. So the thing with berserkers, okay, you can actually, if you're trying to take on a squad of berserkers, one thing, you can put a general in front, and the general will generally survive, but they'll still take pretty big damage. Like they'll still take like 20 hit points of damage. Like if your general is rocking like 50 defense and they have 70 attack, they're still going to take 20 damage. So they're not, they're not invincible against berserkers, your general, that is. So you want to, and they typically carry like really heavy weapons, like the silver great axes, all of the silver blades as well. So what you want to do is just chip them from a distance if you can get a good player phase on them, and then finish them off. You can also break them first, breaking them like breaking a berserker with a silver great axe and you break them with a sword. That's a good way, and they can get the kill. Usually their defense and their res is actually not that high, so they're actually pretty easy to take down. It's just they're mostly dangerous when you have to face them on enemy phase. Like for example, you can't actually advance on them and attack them and take them all out, and there's going to be probably like one berserker left who's just going to wreck one of your units and give you a bad time, right? So player phase are usually pretty easy if you can take them all out on one turn, but like I said, because they have low defense and res, so they're pretty easy from that standpoint. It's just enemy phase, they're really terrifying. So another thing you can do is, because they have smash weapons, it's really hard. Like even if you put a general in front and they use smash weapons on you, they're going to keep knocking your general back. And if you're holding a choke point and they're able to knock your general back and break through the choke point, then they're just going to funnel in and start just murdering all of your mages and all of your other units, right? So one thing I like to do if I need to hold a choke point with a general is I'll actually And say some of them have tomahawks, so they have 1-2 range. What I like to do is actually use the obstruct staff and cast obstruct behind my general, so that way they can't get knocked back. So even if they get hit by the smash weapon, the general won't, because they're armor, they won't get weapon broken, and they will just get slammed back into the ice pillar that was created by obstruct, and that way they can still hold that square, right? They won't, your line won't break. That's one way to do it. That's a safe way to do it in case like one of the berserkers has a tomahawk and you can't safely put a unit behind your general to prevent your general from getting knocked back, right? That's one way to do it. That's a really good use of the obstruct staff. So hopefully that helps you deal with berserker. Again, they're just really nasty on enemy phase. On player phase, they're usually pretty easy to deal with because they have shitty defenses and resistances. Warrior, I would kind of classify as berserker. They may carry heavy weapons. I think they're a little bit easier to deal with. The only thing about warrior is that they carry bows. But if they're carrying a bow on player phase, you can usually exploit the shit out of enemies that have bows and are out of position. You can just walk right up to them and just smack them, right? So I think there's nothing really special about warriors. Archers and snipers. Archers and snipers are actually pretty nasty in squads. One thing you can do to take them out very efficiently is get a allied unit with a smash weapon, like a silver great axe or a silver great lance, and just walk right up to them and use that weapon on them, because they can't counterattack you, right? So that's where smash weapons are really effective on archers. Just walk right up to them. And also too, for like squads of snipers and bows, they can really mess up your day if you leave one alive. So you really have to, if there's a squad of 3 of them, you just definitely want to get rid of them, all of them. And like I said, the point of this video is to get rid of them as efficiently as possible, because that way you're not taking damage and they're not gonna kill one of your units on enemy phase, right? So that's how you deal with snipers. You can, of course, if they're only locked at 2 range because they don't have a longbow, then you can outrange them with longbow or thunder or Thoron. That's another way to do it. And also you can even dip in with magic, just hit them at 1 range. That's L Surge, or even just Boganon, or any of those standard magic. That's another way as well. So they're mainly hard to deal with when they can advance on you and on enemy phase, but you're out of position such that you can't. You just either want to be out of range and then get in range on player phase, or just another good thing is just put a general to, again, they have such high defense. Just give a general a tomahawk, and if they try to attack your general, that you can just counterattack them with tomahawks and get some good enemy phase damage that way, and then just finish them off on player phase. That's another good strategy as well, I think. All right, flyers. Flyers are pretty standard. You just use wind tomes, Excalibur, bows. Stay out of their range. Let them advance on you first. You never want to be in the range, especially flyers. They have darting blow, which gives them speed +5 when they initiate on their attack on enemy phase. So that's going to pretty much double you, right? So you always want to fight them on player phase, unless you have a really good counter on enemy phase. Generals can be pretty good counters. They can take those hits on enemy phase. For Griffin Knights are typically a little weaker in attack than Wyvern Knights, and Griffin Knights also have higher res, while Wyvern Knights have higher defense. So again, you use magic on Wyvern Knights, and you use physical damage on Griffin Knights, right? It's kind of just a reverse there. Generals are pretty good if you just want to face tank them. Usually their attack's not that high. Again, stay out of their range on enemy phase and hit them with bows on player phase. Now that should be pretty obvious. Another thing I like to do is I actually like to use the killer bow to shoot them and fish for crits. The reason I like to do that is because if the killer bow is going to chip, okay, say I have a killer bow and a silver bow, and the silver bow isn't going to kill him anyway, and neither is the killer bow if it doesn't crit. You might as well use the killer bow and roll on a crit, because then if you can kill him in 1 hit with a crit, then you're playing that much more efficiently, right? And you never lost anything because the silver bow wouldn't have killed them anyways. So that's one thing I like to do. I like to fish for crits with Etier and her souped up killer bow. My crit is sitting at like 70, 75 right now actually. So the crits are actually pretty consistent. And that's how I deal with flyers. Again, flyers are also kind of nasty when they're on mountains, because you can't advance on them. They have the mountains, and unless you're using other flyers of yours, then you can't really advance on them that way. And usually when you only bring like 2 flyers and they come in a squad of 3, your 2 flyers can't really deal with 3 flyers. They're just outnumbering you. So if they're going to take a mountain, you just back off and let them advance on you when you're safely on ground and you're able to counterattack on player phase. Just deal with them on player phase. If you want to deal with them on enemy phase, like I said, a general is pretty good. Mages are not really good because against the Griffin Knights. Mages could work against a squad of Wyvern Knights. That as well, yeah. You don't really want to use your archers on enemy phase because your archers are going... Usually they can't even attack back because they usually have 1-2 range and they're just gonna hit your archers. So yeah, just fight them on player phase. That's the most efficient thing. And positioning is very important for that. All right, Wyvern Knights. We went over Wyvern Knights. We have armors. Okay, armors and generals. Yeah, just use magic. They're pretty simple, to be honest. What I like to do is use Bonded Shield with Halberdier, and I put a squad of mages in front with Halberdier using Bonded Shield to protect them, and then I just have them. That's how I like to fight them on enemy phase, and you can kill like pretty much a whole squad of armors. Like if they keep sending armors to fight your mages and they're protected by Bonded Shield, they're just gonna take that enemy phase damage, counterattack damage, and they're just pretty much gonna get shredded. So you can kill like 9 to 10, maybe even 12 armors on one enemy phase by using that Bonded Shield strategy with the mages in front, Halberdier protecting them with that 90% chance to proc Bonded Shield. And usually your mages are fast enough that they won't get doubled, so you only have Bonded Shield only needs to roll once, right? Because if your mages can get doubled, then that's not good because Bonded Shield will only work for that first attack, and then they're going to have to try and dodge the second follow-up attack by the armor. But armors are typically very slow, so that's how I like to deal with them. The mages have a very low chance of getting doubled by armors as long as your mages are keeping up with their stats, right? So, and that's how I just totally shred armor squads on enemy phase. That's how I like to do it, and they're usually pretty easy to deal with on player phase as well. You know, just stay out of range, just use magic. Thorons, if they have 1-2 range, that's pretty good. And yeah, they're pretty simple, in my opinion. All right, I think the last one here is Great Knight. Great Knight is the same thing. They're weak to magic, they're weak to Rider's Bane, and they're weak to hammers and anti-armors. The thing is, if you use physical damage on Great Knights with one of those exploitative weapons like Rider's Bane or the hammer, you have to make sure the unit attacking has really high strength because you know, if they could only originally get like 2 damage on them with just a regular weapon because their defense is so high, then the effective multiplier from the effective weapon isn't going to do much for you. Even if you used a hammer or a Rider's Bane or something like that. Generally, because they have low res, just outrange them and use magic on them, and you can even use the same strategy you used for the armor, or the same strategy I used for the armors, where I put the Bonded Shield formation, just put my mages protected by Bonded Shield, and then just fight them on enemy phase, and that usually shreds them pretty hard on enemy phase. Their speed is a little higher than armors, so you have to watch out to make sure your mages don't get doubled, because like I said, the Bonded Shield is not going to protect them from the second attack. But that's how that's still a really good way to deal with it. You can even put a really fast unit like a Wolf Cav, like for example Marin, who has the Levin Sword, and she can counterattack with the Levin Sword, which does magic damage on them, and there's no chance of her getting doubled by Great Knights, so that's a really effective strategy as well. Just, you know, getting that magic damage out on enemy phase. And in player phase, you know, you deal with them the same way. You just stay out of range and just use magic. All right, I think that's pretty much it. Let me know if you guys have questions in the comments, and hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.